Hey everyone, today I want to make a video regarding the second property that I ended up purchasing in my journey of growing, I guess, a property portfolio. That's something I'm looking to do. So I want to give the details of the deal that I did, why I just ended up deciding to buy that as a second property purchase for me. And that's what I'm going to share today. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go through it. So this deal was a deal in a small town of 5,000 people in the central North Island. So I won't give too many details regarding the deal, like in regards to the address and the town, just because I feel like New Zealand is so small, and I think there's a balance between having privacy, right, for the deal that I partake in, even though it can probably be found if there's enough, research being done. And I feel like, transparency should be there too. So there's a bit of a balance between the two, but I'll decide not to disclose the address, but I can give the full numbers of the detail of the deal. So basically, I found this property in pretty late 2025. So I want to say maybe September 2025, so a couple of months ago from the time I'm recording this video. The purchase price ended up being $390,000, and I was looking to buy this property with a 10% deposit through a non-bank lender as an investment property. So I couldn't go through the main bank on this one just because at the time the requirements for buying an investment property at the main bank lenders is 30%, and I didn't have a 30% deposit, but I still want to make a deal work. And I knew that maybe I could, even with the offering of this 10% deposit at a non-bank lender at a higher rate. So I'm going to give the analysis now. So one requirement, and this goes for pretty much any lender when you're purchasing with less than a 20% deposit. So there's a lot of options available. Say if you're buying your first home as an owner-occupied buyer, there's a few exemptions available, but pretty much at any point in time, regardless of the property you're purchasing, a lender is going to want to have confidence of the property you're buying is worth what it is. So they will require a registered valuation to be done because they don't want to be in a position where you're buying something for 465. Your exposure to it is really, really high. So say, for example, if the property I was actually buying was maybe worth like 370, and my lending, after having a 10% deposit on this property, would be 351. Their exposure is really, really high. So they might be in a position where they're vulnerable in the event that I say default, don't make the repayments, because the spread between the value of what the property is actually worth and my lending is very, very close. So after like agent fees, if they need to sell the property and there's a mortgagee sale and all that stuff, it's just going to be a headache for them, and they don't want to be in that position. That's the same. That goes for any lender, right? That's not what they want. So I need to get a registered valuation, and with my background, I had pretty high confidence that would come around this figure because the property I was buying was a duplex. And in New Zealand, majority of the time, at least, or at least from my experience, is that a property that is achieving multiple income streams, or just more than one, say, standard tenancy agreement or rental income, it will be valued based on the rental income it's achieving if it's a multi-income property. So this property had a rental appraisal of $800 per week. At the time, it was getting $680 per week, but one of the units was very under-rented, so I was getting $280 a week relative to the other unit that was getting $400 a week. So they were identical units, so or somewhat identical, at least in the floor size, but one was a little bit nicer than the other one. And ironically, the nicer one was getting $280 a week. But anyway, that's the metrics of the deal. So the valuation came back at 465 just based on comparables of the town with the yield that it was achieving relative to that price. So I feel like it was, from memory, it was valued as if it was getting a 9% yield, which was average for the town for other multi-income properties and with the condition it was in. So that's how the valuer came to that conclusion. So there's a pretty decent spread on the purchase price because the property itself didn't really need any work. It was already Healthy Homes compliant. It was already at a tenable standard, but there were already tenants in there, which was pretty good going. And I quite liked that, despite it being in a small town. I personally had more of an appetite for cash flow, and I think if there's a spread between what the property price is worth relative to the valuation is there, and it's getting that good cash flow, I personally had appetite for that. It might not necessarily be the best thing for you, in your strategy, and that's something maybe I can analyze, or you have to come to the conclusion of. It's something I may be able to help out with, but for me, I was comfortable with this. And in terms of the growth upside, despite it maybe being in a town that's not increasing its population, I don't see much development going on there. So even though that the town itself isn't necessarily, increasing in popularity or population, there wasn't, development partaking where the, supply and demand ratios were out of whack. So anyway, for me, I was comfortable with this. Now, in regards to the cash flow and the expenses on this specific property, so my loan on this deal through this non-bank lender that I went through was 90% of what I was purchasing for. So I had a 10% deposit effectively, or my LVR was 90%. Now, this lender charged me a 1% fee on this loan as well. So this was capitalized on the loan. So I didn't necessarily have to pay this 1% fee up front, which was nice. So the total loan amount was actually this amount, 354,510, and the interest rate on this loan was 7.49% for me at the time. So it was necessary for this lender to have principal and interest payments. I couldn't make the payments interest only in the short term, so the weekly repayments on the loan were 571. Now, in regards to the other expenses, I think the rates range from, I think it was somewhere between 6,500 to 6,800 per year. So maybe I'll put this figure to be more conservative in this analysis. So 130 a week. $51 for property insurance for both the units. Collectively, property manager 8%, and then I just put a $2,000 annual figure for repairs and no water bill. So in the short term, or at least at this non-bank lender for the time being, the expenses were $865 a week. So it was cash flow negative of $65, but the incentive of this property is the fact that, say, in the event that I could go back to a main bank lender or transfer this or get approved at a main bank lender and have the main bank lender pay out everything I owed to this non-bank lender, I might make the approach and say, hey, Westpac, for example, hey, Westpac, I have a property that's worth 465. Here's the registered valuation. Maybe they might not accept that for 6 months. Some main banks don't have the appetite to use a registered valuation if there hasn't been any work completed post purchase. But maybe in say 6 months or longer, I could maybe use that valuation, get the same value would have come through, and then maybe they have more comfort with being able to do this. But regardless, this is sort of the way it could be presented to them where they would be keen to take on. And this doesn't just go for Westpac, it's any main bank lender, but basically, hey, main bank lender, I have a property worth 465. My lending on this property is 354. I can prove with confidence that I can afford the repayments with this. I'm making X amount from my employed job, working at Blueprint or being a mortgage advisor. Here's my income, and I'm also getting $800 per week, and maybe I can also display the rental income I'm getting from my other property or other properties that I have, right? So I just have to make the commentary that I can afford it, and then Westpac on the main lender might say, yes, we're happy with this. We can see the spread between what your property is worth and the lending is. We will happily pay out what you owe to the non-bank lender, and now we'll give you an interest rate that we have available right now. So for example, at the moment, Westpac and most main bank lenders are offering 4.49 for the 1 year fixed rate. So say in that scenario, if I was getting that rate and my lending was the same, the repayments on that would not be that. Hang on, what have I done here? Apologies, guys. I see I'm getting an annual figure, which obviously makes sense. So say in the scenario, say if it's interest only, the repayments become $306 per week is like my minimal fixed commitment that I would have to have on a mortgage like this. So say in the scenario, say if they actually are 306, now all of a sudden this deal becomes $200 per week cash flow positive from that, right? And say in the future, over the long term, these are obviously only the short-term numbers. There might be a scenario where in the small town, rents increase, maybe minimum wage goes from $23 an hour to $30 an hour, and the rental income goes up from $800 per week to $900 per week, and I'm paying down the proceeds of the debt. Maybe I decide to increase my principal repayments and not just do interest only. Then obviously, over time, that's going to reduce my fixed lending commitments, or not necessarily fixed lending commitments, but just my loan balance, and the rental income is going to increase, so the cash flow becomes even better, or I can choose to have it that way at least. So that was the logic of this deal and why I bought it. But being fully transparent, I actually decided to exit this deal. So I ended up settling on this property through this non-bank lender at the time, and there was someone that was keen to take it off me at $411,000. So I decided to exit this property and then pursue using the cash from that deal and the cash that I put into this deal to maybe look at buying another property, which I'm actually looking at doing right now. So I'm in the market to buy again, but I felt as if just to mitigate my risk with it being in a small town, I was happy to exit at that price. So there's the details of why I bought this. If you're looking at maybe buying an investment property and want my analysis of the deal, something I'm happy to provide. It's what I do. I can't specifically say for you to buy this property, right? That's something that's a conflict of interest of mine, because obviously if you get a mortgage because of me and I'm saying go buy this property, that's a big no-no. But I can obviously analyze a deal that you're looking at and give you my full honest opinion. If you're a client of mine and I'm helping you with your mortgage lending, I can definitely analyze a deal and give you these metrics. So hope you guys like this video. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. All my stuff is in the description. Cheers.